Using labour market data to drive careers insights. The final session again gets down into the details, but this time looking not at how data can inform a recovery curriculum planning, but rather how the same sorts of data can then be used to promote courses to people in your local area, particularly to those who have lost their jobs and are looking to upskill to be able to return to work.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final of our conference series, brought to you by Colleague Company and MZ. My name is John Gray, Director of Further Education at MZ, and I'm delighted to be joined today for the final part of the session by Abigail Barzi, Careers and Employment Coach at Bridgend College. So we, as I said, this is the final part of our four-part series. I hope that some of you have been able to join us on the previous three sessions, where we started off looking at a state of the nation for the Welsh labour market with our senior economist Duncan Brown, and some really insightful data came through from that, and then that was picked up in the discussion last Friday with Iestyn Davies and three college principals, along with Andy Derman, Managing Director of MZ UK. So again, some really interesting discussion there about how to lead colleges in our local communities. This week on Tuesday, we then started to look at how that data from the state of the nation could be used to drive curriculum strategy. And then today we're going to look at some of that similar data and a couple of new data sets and some other examples about how to use labour market data to drive careers insight. So that's going to be our focus for today's session. A couple of housekeeping things first. If you have any questions throughout the session, please put them in your question panel on the control panel. So you'll see there a little box for questions. So please pose those throughout the session, and Abby and I will try and pick those up at the end. Also to be aware as well that the last three recordings, so the last three sessions have been recorded and they're all available online now. So if you wanted to watch those, then you can do so without having to register. So what we'll do is we'll send a link round afterwards, and you'll be able to access that. So a quick run through the agenda for today's session. We're going to have a very quick recap from session one. Important to get that kind of context and the data for the state of the nation. But what we're going to do then is I'll really consider why that's important for careers insight and why it's important for our students right now. We're then going to look at how to use LMI for careers insight, using Career Coach to deliver some careers insight, and then finish off with the case study from Bridgend College. So I've shared this on most sessions, and I think it's a really good example of not just a bit of kind of explaining MZ's mission, but I like the diagram to explain why you use labour market information at all. And you know, thinking about this in the context of careers insight, the importance of jobs and skills and the data being at the heart of that diagram there, I think is quite clear. So thinking about you as educational establishments, so as colleges or training providers, and then really understanding that the labour market data, and then working then with people, so with your students, whether that's adults or young people or parents, to really understand where the in-demand skills, where the jobs of the future are going to be, and then that then connects them into the employment market. So using the labour market data as that central point, as the baseline to have those conversations. So firstly, the impact of COVID, and we couldn't do any session, I think, at the moment without looking at this. And for those of you who joined the session, seems a long time ago now, but last week with Duncan, our senior economist, we went through some quite high level detail about the impact of COVID on the Welsh economy. If you didn't see that session, I'd urge you to go back and look at the recording of that. Some really interesting information in there. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of talk through a couple of those kind of key points that comes from this, and then summarize as to why this is important for our students right now. So first of all, a couple of things happening on this chart. The top section is looking at claimant count, so the unemployment figure, basically a subset of that unemployment figure, and what we can see there is that significant increase from March this year, when we went into that first lockdown, and a steep increase right the way up to May, and then we've just started to almost plateau now. So in terms of the colour coding, we have green as the UK and blue for Wales, so we can see proportionately Wales not quite as badly affected as the UK in general, but nonetheless still a big increase there in claimants. The bottom part of the chart is then looking at online job postings, and we use this as a measure to see how the economy is responding. Now, it's not the only measure, but what obviously, as you'll appreciate, if people are hiring, then they tend to be in a pretty decent place. So we use that as one of the indicators to see how the economy is performing. And we can see on this chart that from March, that big decrease in online job posting really dropped off a cliff edge and then bottomed out around May, and then it started to pick back up again. And again, we've got a good uptick in that for Wales, and probably better so than what the UK average is. So some green shoots of recovery possibly there in terms of the online job posting market. So next, just to take a look at the industries mostly affected. So this is looking at the job postings again, and we're looking at the industries which were most affected compared to UK. So the UK equivalent is the red dot. So here what we can see is that jobs in transportation and storage and health and social work continue to post well. They had increases between February and August, as we'd probably expect, given the big increase for those particular industries. And education performed well as well. But then down at the bottom, where we had an adverse effect, so a lower amount of job postings, we can see there that we've got things like financial insurance, accommodation and food service, arts, entertainment, and professional scientific. So a good mix there of the industries, some with a positive impact and some negative. So similarly now, this chart looks at the occupational grouping. So rather than industries, we're looking at a broad occupational grouping. So we can see there up at the top, elementary occupations. That's the lowest level of occupational grouping. So in there, we've got things like elementary storage, cleaning, elementary construction. So we can see there was an increased demand for those types of job postings. And similarly, next one down, process and plant machine operatives. So those performing well and caring in particular for Wales. So those three perform particularly well and better than the UK average. But again, then down at the bottom, we see where the big impact has been in those kind of skilled trades and associate professional, which in real terms, very broadly speaking, is where a lot of our kind of curriculum trains people for, in those, particularly around those skilled trade occupations. So just some headline views there as to what's been what's weathered the storm quite well up to now, and where the impact has been. And then just to look at then the industries with highest furlough exposure. So obviously this is where the people taking furlough have been highest in these industries. And again, important context to understand this. So as we'd expect, restaurant and catering establishments at the top, hair and barbers second, and nurses and publicans. So probably no great surprises there in the top few. But as you look down that list at the ones with the highest exposure, lots of these will be where our students are particularly maybe looking to get into their first employment. Maybe they're looking for part-time jobs, and these are going to have a real negative impact on how we progress moving forwards. And still, as we know, even though furloughs will come to an end eventually, this is then kind of kicks the can down the road potentially for further unemployment. So one we need to really keep a close eye on. Now, this next chart, I'm going to let it play a couple of times because I've clicked through there the terms of what already whizzed across screen. What this is looking at is the top 20 most in-demand skills in the SOC classification, so standard occupational classification 7 to 9. So we're looking at the hard skills which are in demand in those lower level of occupations in our economies. And as we saw, it was those lower level job postings which were still in quite high demand through lockdown, so elementary and process and plant and so on. So these are the kind of, that's the occupational groupings we're really looking at. So I'm just going to let that play through once or twice more. You will get the slides afterwards, so you can always watch this through yourselves. But what we're just trying to show there, if you look at that, so warehousing at the top maintains its position right the way through. But then, from January, there's these, other big increases or decreases in the hard skills. So I'll, as we said, I'll let you see that in more detail when you watch the slides back yourselves. But a nice way to visualize the changing skills. The next chart you'll be glad is static, and you can actually see this one much clearer. So this is so the last chart, by the way, was for the UK. This is actually for Wales. So this is the top 15 fastest growing hard skills just in Wales. So the title says 4 nations, but you'll see there I've got Wales selected. And if you go on our blog, you can actually see this, and it does animate. And you can flip between England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland as well. But for this chart showing the top 15 fastest growing hard skills in the UK, particularly looking at Wales, we can see the big increase. Look, PPE, personal protective equipment, child protection, warehousing, career development, pharmaceuticals. So interesting to see that presented in that way, that these are the skills which are really in demand, and some of them, really significantly, these are the fastest growing. So some that you probably would expect on there, but then we've got things like mental health that's really coming through, things like autism as well. I'm seeing in various parts of the UK. Mental health, though, seems to be coming through really strongly in lots of places across the UK. So yeah, again, useful context for our students to be aware of. So just to pause and reflection for a moment, why does this matter to our students? This data almost sometimes just seems so far away from us. We know it's happening in the economy, but it's so broad, it's so far away. How does it really affect us right now? Well, the answer, I think, is more than ever. So whether you're teaching adults or young people, often when we talk about careers insight, I think people think about young people. But I think more than ever now, adults are going to play a really big part in careers advice and guidance. There's going to be a massive need to reskill unemployed people, and anybody who is thinking about a career change over the course of this next 12 months is going to have a real challenge to find something which has not had a negative impact, and the jobs market is going to be so competitive. So understanding what's happening in the labour market and where those opportunities might be is going to be critical for adults. We've then got young people, probably most people on the line that's going to be their main student body, and the impacts are going to be felt by young people for probably for several years. Listening to the radio this morning, one of the commentators on there was saying that the economy might not recover until something like 2024. So the effects of this are going to be long. But thinking about young people, they're going to be thinking about their first full-time employment. What's that going to be? What course do I need to help me to get there? What are the jobs going to be like in that industry by the time I actually get there? As we've seen already on the data as well, the part-time work that they might be searching for is going to be impacted. So if they need to work part-time whilst they're at college to pay the bills and support with family, that's going to be challenging to find that type of part-time work as well. So using this data, whether it's for adults or for young people, is going to be crucial to helping to help point them in the right direction and get a good grasp of what's happening in the economy. Now, for those of you who've watched the other sessions, remember, we're talking about labour market data here. That's what EMSI does, but we're never advocating just using the data. You'll be talking to employers. You understand your communities and the key stakeholders within that better than anyone. What we're just suggesting here is to use the data as a starting point to point you in the right direction and to give you that insight. And for today's session, we're going to be thinking about this in terms of some of the tactical uses, so looking at things like career coach, talk with that. But first of all, we're going to think about, well, how do you use that data to inform the strategy? So there's, you think about using this data to inform how you develop your career strategy, and then some of the tactics in which you can use to present that to your students. So as we just said there, thinking about putting the student there at the heart of this this conversation, whether they're an adult or a young person, whatever age they are, they're going to be thinking about their future. And there's so many things to consider. Thinking about the job that they want. What qualification do I need? How much do I need to earn? How much do I want to earn? What courses are available to me? Who are the companies who are hiring around me, and what skills are in demand? That there's so many questions to consider when you're thinking about your future, whether that's going into employment right now or whether it's going into employment in 3 or 4 years' time. Those questions are still there. And what we try to do at EMSI is to give you the data that you need, various sources of data to underpin some of those discussions and decisions. So on the left-hand side, you've got the data that we use from largely from things like government sources and very structural data. And then we've got this really rich data that comes through with job postings, which gives us the analysis of hard and common skills. And as we'll see when we start to look at Career Coach, some of the live job postings. So we put all this data together, and then what we're trying to do then is help you to then signpost this data to your students. So putting that diagram back on again, thinking about putting the student at the heart of that and thinking about their future. And we're going to look at some data shortly, but we've got all this data then. And what I want to get you to do first is think about the potential uses of this data before we actually start to get into that. So just in a few examples to name but a few, so we can use it in work experience. We can use the data to help to identify where work experience might be, where opportunities might be, and what the skills that are going to be needed by those employers. We can see things like which employers are actually recruiting and where those opportunities might be. I think one of the most significant ways in which we can use this data for careers insight is through marketing activities and marketing strategy, and we're going to touch on that quite a lot through today's presentation. So things like websites, prospectuses, social media activity. We see great examples now of people linking courses to careers and schools engagement activities. So we work with lots of our clients across the UK to embed careers insight into schools engagement activities. And I think personally, I'm very passionate and a big advocate about this. The younger we can get that information to students, even from kind of late stages of primary school, and certainly from kind of 10, 11 years old upwards, just getting them thinking about what the future looks like. We've then got the course itself. So we as training providers, we're delivering training, whether that's a full-time course, a part-time course, whatever that might be, and not just through the actual content itself and the main program, but through tutorial, through career sessions, whether that's group or individual. There's so many ways to pull in this data, and that's why it's important firstly to think, what is our strategy? How are we going to use this data to inform students? Because there's so many ways in which we can do it. We need to have consistency and a clear direction of travel. So thinking then about we've got that in our mind now, thinking about the strategy and thinking about maybe how we're going to use some of this data. What I want to do now is revisit some of the data and a couple of new data sets as well from other parts of the conference series. And again, we're trying to keep that golden thread running through it. Okay, we can see the big impact on the economy. We've talked a little bit about what that means to our students. Now, as we get into some of the data which is more localized to particular regions, what does that mean, and what can we glean from that? So what I've done in terms of this data, if you weren't on the last session, I've just taken some samples from around Wales. We've got a couple of different geographic locations, a couple of different industries we're looking at. So it's just to give you a flavour really, and a variety in which to think about. So first of all, we're going to look at engineering occupations in Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan, and we've got a few different data sets on here, which you can have a look at as I talk through. But again, so you'll get the slides. So there's quite a lot of detail on here, but you'll be able to get into this in a bit more detail. Lots of the people on the webinar anyway are Welsh colleges, particularly AMSI customers, to be able to get into this level of detail yourselves. So a few things to point out on here. Remember, we're looking at engineering occupations in Cardiff and Vale at Glamorgan. So first of all, top left-hand corner, we've got 8,000 jobs in 2019, 7% below the national average. And then looking at the next box across, we've got a 4% growth projection out to 2028. And that's going to be growing faster than the national average. So a couple of things to point out here, which and for those of you who have heard me speak before around these things, I use this term quite a lot: interesting but not useful. So it's great to understand for students that there's a demand for engineering. Engineering is a very broad group of occupations that we've selected there. It's a large industry. And it's good to know that there's a solid number of jobs in this area, so 8,000, and it's great to know that there's a growth projection for that into the future. So on the face of it, that's good, and a solid career potentially to go into. We can then see the average wages, median wages, which is always useful to understand in terms of salary expectations for students, and whether that's going to meet their needs. But the real area of usefulness is in the data below. So this then starts to break out those 8,000 jobs and look at the growth, and look at which of the areas, which of the particular occupations are going to be the best performing. So if we just look at the first couple, for example, we can see that there's actually, there's a negative growth rate. So there's a decline in growth for vehicle technicians and metalworking. So both quite small in percentage terms, and there's still a really good number of jobs there. So that decline, could be negligible, but still, nonetheless, it's worth highlighting that to potential students. But then, as we work down the list, there's some quite strong growth areas. So we've got civil engineers and electrical engineers, both in double digits in terms of percentage increases. So my point here is, it's important that we get into this level of detail, and this can be overwhelming for students, and that's why I think a clear strategy of how you're going to use the data is important. But get people hooked in the fact that there's going to be growth in engineering, but then really through their program, through advice and guidance activities, let's get students to understand where those particular areas of growth or decline might be. That's going to be different in different areas, and that's why it's so important. So next, we're going to move on to thinking about geographic locations, and this is a common thing I see a lot across the UK as we work with colleges. So this chart, just to explain it first, is I've grouped this by professional occupation. So again, it's quite a broad categorisation. Looking at professional occupations, and we're looking at this area around Swansea, Neath, Port Talbot and Bridgend. And what I wanted to just illustrate here, this is looking at data between November 19 and November 20. So we've got that kind of 12-month period there that we're looking at. But when you look at the number of job postings by those three areas, you can see that significantly the jobs are in Swansea. Now, this is probably no surprise to people knowing this geographic area well, but particularly with young students, and I see this a lot, there's a number of factors we need to consider. One is their aspiration. They often feel and think that they're going to work very locally. So if you live in Bridgend, you might think that you're going to work in Bridgend, and you very well might do, and we shouldn't kind of discourage people from that if that's what they want to do. But equally, there's this awareness about where the jobs might be, and the fact that you may have to travel for some of those jobs. So what I'm trying to show here on this chart is for those professional level jobs, you're looking at probably the high proportion of students are going to have to move into a different geographic location to undertake some of those professional jobs. And again, this varies significantly with different localities and different industries. We are looking at a very broad group in here of professional occupations, but it varies so much as we start to get into different industries and different areas. So moving on to the next chart. So this time we're looking at computing occupations in Pembrokeshire. So we've changed our geographic location again, and we're looking at a particular grouping of computing occupations. Now, number of things to consider with this, and certainly I think skills data, there's so much interest and insight we can get from skills data, which is going to inform not just curriculum strategy, but careers advice and guidance. So a number of things to take from this data. So on the left hand side, we've got the top hard skills. So these are the hard skills mentioned in online job postings. And we're looking at a period there of October 18 to October 20, so a couple of years, so you get a good volume in there. And then the common skills on the right hand side, again looking at that same time period. So a few things that we can take from this. Firstly, that the hard skills are going to be critical in terms of the expertise and competence people need to do this level of technical work. So we can see there that CSS, cascading style sheets, Java language, Java programming script, HTML, for example, the top 3 skills there. So those are, largely around those types of programming activities, and we've got software development in 4th. So while somebody might be interested in computing, what it's important to do is signpost to them the main in-demand skills. Now, the first session this week, we touched on curriculum strategy, and we talked about just how important it is to develop these skills into the qualifications that you're delivering. So presuming you're doing that well, what we then need to do is tell students about those skills and why those skills are important, because we're not just making this up. These are taken from live online job postings and a high volume as well. So it's about making that connection with the skills that we are teaching in courses and why those skills are important to employers. So that's hard skills, but then common skills for me is often the most interesting thing to look at, and I spend a lot of time working with colleges around this. So if you think about this in the context of, if in a very competitive labour market, lots of students are going to have, or lots of, even not students, but people in work as well, will have some of these hard skills. So it's going to be a very competitive marketplace. Now, often the common skills are things which can be the difference maker. So if we start to look at those common skills, we get a feel for the kind of person that employers are looking at. So good communicators, good at solving problems and troubleshooting, good customer service skills and innovative, self-motivated. You start to get a feel for the type of person that's being looking for to be recruited. Those skills that sit alongside those hard skills. So thinking about those careers advice and guidance strategies and applications, how do we get people, how do we teach these skills, and how do we assess the skills so that students are going to improve them through their learning? But 2, as they're then coming into the labour market, whether that's an adult or a young person, how do they reference these skills in their CV? How do they reference these skills in interviews? And certainly from other data sets, we know that there's such a high volume now of recruitment agencies which are actually recruiting for jobs, and we all know how that they work in terms of using systems and processes to actually filter out applicants. So referencing these words, the key skills that they're looking for, is vital really in order to get through and get shortlisted. And then when you get through to the interview stage, how you then demonstrate some of these skills. So lots of insight that we can gather from hard skills and common skills, and how we package them together. And although we're looking at careers insight, I don't think you can remove it from the wider conversation of, have we got these skills embedded in teaching and learning? So moving on to the next data set, we've got then this idea of measuring technology risk, and again we talked about this in more detail in the other sessions. But thinking now about the high risk, middle risk, and low risk activities for the future. So this comes from our automation risk index, and we're basically automation in its broadest sense, looking at technology, and we're starting to think and demonstrate within the data which activities, which tasks within jobs are at risk of automation and at risk of being changed in the future. So the reason why I want to flag this in this session is we think it's important to start signposting this to students, and particularly as you make changes to curriculum, getting them to understand why certain things are changing and what jobs of the future might start to look like. So if we look at the high risk category, we can see that these are tasks which we are saying that are at high chances of high risk of being automated in the future. We've got things like controlling machines, repairing and maintaining equipment, handling and moving objects. So if your curriculum is that, if that's within your curriculum, you're teaching people about those types of skill or activity, in the future those things are going to be far less needed because of automation. Whereas when we look at the other end of the spectrum, the lower risk, that they're the more interpersonal skills. So we've got training and teaching of others, we've got establishing and maintaining relationships, thinking creatively. So they're all those more interpersonal and creative skills. And you know, this is just data exercises, but we can certainly see, and you'll have real experience of this in terms of working with your students and employers, the greater need for those skills coming through, and less need for some of those more physical skills, as we refer to them. So the need to kind of start thinking about this in longer term careers advice and guidance strategies, and why skills are changing as they are. So moving on, hopefully that slot the presentation has been useful. So picking up that kind of headline data, understanding what that data means, how we use it in careers strategy to drive careers insight. And now what I'm going to do is just work through a few slides around the career coach tool, so EMS's career coach platform, and just to get you thinking about how to deliver some of these messages in careers insight to adults and young people. Now, you don't have to have a career coach to do this. I'm using this because it helps us to articulate the points in the presentation, but the principles are the same. You know, you can still access this type of data and start to build it into your different activities that you undertake in the college. So first of all, a couple of a few benefits about the reminder of the benefits of career coach. Two main use cases: marketing and student recruitment, and then careers advice and guidance. In terms of the marketing aspect, you know, linking courses to careers is of paramount importance. As a parent, you know, I think as you start to work with your children to signpost that's something you always have in your mind, even if it's not at the forefront of the young person's mind at that stage. The careers assessment helps you to identify which careers you may be interested in quickly, and showing things like similar careers to what you might be interested in, good ways to broaden people's perspective. And then from the careers advice and guidance side, as we've seen, some kind of detailed LMI data on careers helps you to plan. Data is very specific to the region that you're working in, so as we know, the data can fluctuate so much between different areas, and then the ability to you know, create a profile and save CVs, and so on. But the big drive, and as I said, the principle of this, whether you use career coach or not, is to link the course to the career. And these next couple of slides just show that. So really thinking about, okay, well, in this course that we're teaching, that we're supporting students with, how does this course link to careers? And that link might be very obvious, as this one is probably on the screen. But they're not just about saying, okay, well, this job's going to get you into a certain career as a travel assistant, but then making that next leap and say, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of, are there jobs? Where are the jobs? What's the starting salary? What's the end salary? Is this a career destination for me? So it's really you know, worth spending that time and doing that analysis and starting to provide that data which links the actual course that you're teaching, and how that then translates into the career for the student. Now, there's different ways we're going to look at this. Sometimes it's looking at the long-term projections. Sometimes it's, if it's a young person, they might not be entering the labour market for 2 or 3 years, but sometimes it's more about getting the data that's about the economy right now, particularly for adults who are reskilling due to the crisis. So these next couple of slides, what I wanted to just show then is looking at Pembrokeshire College's career coach. So Pembrokeshire was one of the the data examples I used looking at computing occupations. And so what I wanted to do there is just then kind of segue across into Pembrokeshire College's career coach platform. So it's using the same data. We've used the data from our analyst platform to put the slides together for the Careers Insight data on the previous slides. Now looking at the career coach platform, how that data is then presented to students. So here we're looking at programmers and software development professionals, so a very specific occupation, but we can then see the daily tasks that's going to be needed in that type of role, and then importantly, referencing back to the data that we looked at, we can see the top skills that employers are asking for, and that's, as I say, using the same data set that we've used before. So we can see there the top programming languages and so on that's needed for software developers, and then we can see the top companies who are posting those jobs in this particular area. So a great way to make that link between using the data for strategy, developing curriculum, advice and guidance activities, and then a very tactical way that of how we present that to the learner. And as I said, this is using Career Coach, but even if you didn't have the Career Coach tool, we still encourage you to think about how you present this data to your learners. So on the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you an example of the Career Coach platform with one of our flagship users in the UK, Preston's College, who use the tool really well. And they're just little animated videos just showing you, which I'll talk over, just how the tool actually works. So for those of you who've not seen the platform before. So first of all, this is the home page. We can flip between courses and careers. So the real benefit is that we link these careers to your courses. But we can see there that we're working through the different levels of career and quickly get into detail about these kind of construction related professions. So once we get to that the relevant career that we're looking for, so we work through there that last slide of the different options available within construction. As we said, construction is a very broad industry. Once we find the actual career we're interested in, so in this case plumbing and heating engineer, we can then start to pull through the median salary, the number of jobs, and again, this is localized data to Preston, so very important to provide that context for students. What we can do then, though, is we can start to work our way through different data about plumbing and heating engineers. So the daily tasks they might perform, the educational level they need to work in that setting, and then again, this skills employers are asking for, and signposting those so that we're building those into the different curriculum. And then more importantly, probably for adults looking to get into the workplace right now, we then list out some of the jobs in the market in the local region. So that these are real-time live job postings, so they can make that connection, make the connection from a career they might be interested in, whether there's a long-term demand for that career, what the salaries are, and so on. And then if they want to make that next step, we then quickly bringing in the real-time job postings alongside that, so that people can then apply for those jobs. So just wanted to show you that journey. And as I said, whether you use Career Coach or not, that journey is still the same. Taking the information about the career and then linking it through into how you actually get into that employment. So last couple of slides in terms of this, just looking at a couple of other examples of how to think about integrating careers information into your, this example is a website. So this is from Brooklands College, again over in England. I really like how these guys have presented this. So when you hit their website, you can actually decide whether you want to choose a course or whether you want to choose a career. And if you choose career, so there is the example shows a chef, that would then take you across into their careers data about what it is to be a chef, and ultimately we'll link it back to their course. But you know, as we know, many people, particularly young people, they have an idea about what they want to do as a career, but they've not yet thought about that detail of a course. And as a marketer myself, I know it's often the wrong way around how we present information for colleges. We talk about courses, but that's the end point for a lot of people. Is what they want to really do is they need to know about their aspiration for careers first. So a nice example there. And then this example is integrating that kind of careers data into a website. So here we can see relating to a plumbing diploma level 2, we can see then a number of different bits of LMI, the wage potential, the number of new job opportunities. You know, you can search for similar careers. So again, nice ways to present this information. And this could be on an external website, or it could be on, you know, more of an intranet. You know, presenting that information to people. But the main thing is we're getting people thinking. We're linking the labour market data to courses, which is going to help us with that that careers journey and careers insight. Another example is of how to kind of link this data through is building it into your kind of lesson planning activities. So these resources are available from MZ. If you drop me an email, I can email you these to as PDFs. So a couple of examples just to get you thinking about lesson plans which can help around a student engagement session. So by that is things like you know, schools engagement, delivering a session to younger students and getting them thinking about their careers. And there's some activity sheets as well to complete with that. And then some ideas around a lesson plan for a career session. So getting people thinking about their careers goals and then how that works through into a session and developing their ideas. So happy to share those if that's useful. But again, just trying to give you ideas of, we talked earlier on about some of these ways in which to integrate the information, just to show you some actual physical examples of how we and customers have done that. So last couple of things to finish off before we move into today's case study. I think the other side to this is about the data that we then use to drive our careers insights. So this time, rather than looking at labour market data and the demand, what I've just got here on these next couple of slides is some data which is driven from the Career Coach tool. So those of you who use Career Coach will be familiar with this, but we capture the data of people who are actually using the tool. So we can see the number of visits in this case that a Career Coach platform has had. But most importantly, we can then see the top careers and courses and top favorited careers and courses which students are actually looking at. So what that allows us to do then is target our careers advice and guidance more in a more appropriate way, responding to the needs of the users by understanding what are the top careers at that time. And I certainly know from looking at this across the UK that the demand has fluctuated from what colleges usually experience to probably different types of careers as we enter this COVID world or world post-COVID. So having this information about student demand can be really beneficial. And you know, again, this example looking at the number of assessments completed really helps to give data to support, you know, education regulators and quality assurance marks for careers in terms of those kind of assessments. And then in this the example at the bottom there, we can now break that down by school as well. So if you're doing this for schools engagement sessions, we can actually then break down the number of careers assessments completed by each different school, and then what the top viewed careers within that school as well. So you know, just getting to think about the other side of the equation, not just labour market information, but then responding to student demand as well, and using those two bits of data to inform the strategy and then the execution of careers activities. So I'm going to stop talking for a while now. I'm delighted to hand over to Abby from Bridgend College, who's going to take us through a case study of how the guys down there are using Career Coach. So I'm going to hand over to Abby now, and then I'm going to come back at the end for to answer any questions that you may have. So over to you, Abby.
Hello, right, I'm just going to switch slides. Oh, I don't think it's going to let me. So yeah, I'm going to be talking a bit about how we use Career Coach. So to move on to the next slide. So we'll start with just a bit of an introduction, and then I'll go on to start talking about how we use Career Coach in Bridgend College, the benefits of it and what we found useful, and then I'll open up to any questions that you might have about the tool. So my name's Abigail Bassey. I work for Bridgend College, which is a college in South Wales that offers further education and higher education courses, apprenticeships and work-based learning. I'm a careers and employment coach and work as part of the Cyfleoedd team, which means opportunities and is the career hub in the college. We work with students and employers to enhance careers education, promote work-related opportunities and enable talent pipelines to business. A bit about what I get up to. Move on to the next one. Sorry, John, I think you're going to have to do it because they won't allow me.
Yeah, apologies, everyone. We seem to have had a few technical issues with this screen sharing, so I'll click through the slides. Abby, just give me a nudge when to do that.
Okay, go ahead. And again, so using Career Coach. So how we use it, the first way in which I use it the most is in one-to-one career guidance interviews, especially with challenging learners. This is a great tool. So it encourages open conversation, allows learners to take ownership of their own journey. So it's really nice to be able to sit down with a student who might not feel confident about maybe the career that they want to go into, or even to sit down with someone who knows what they want to go into but not wants to explore the role a little bit. It doesn't matter where they are in the journey, they're able to sit down with me and go through it, and we use the tool together. As John mentioned, it's great for course exploration. So it means that they can type in a career that they might want to go into, and it will always link back to our courses. So it really gets them thinking about not just the career they want to go into, but what type of courses, what are the training, what is the skills that they need to be able to get there. I do find with a lot of students, they kind of think about more the now rather than what they need to be doing to get to the career that they want to get into. Another way we use it is, of course, career exploration. That's the main tool on there. So yeah, we absolutely get the students to get involved with that, sit down, type in any career that they're interested in, and like I said, it links back to courses. And what's really great is that you can type in very vague terms and jobs, and it opens up links and options for the student, encourages them to think more openly about careers as a whole, rather than just this is, got my blinkers on and this is what I want to do. It allows them to open that up. In Wales, some of our students do have to do a Welsh baccalaureate, which supports their qualification. And as a career coach, we absolutely get involved with that. So one of the assignments is to create a career passport where they have to look into two job roles and do a bit of an exploration. So this is the perfect tool. So all the tutors get involved there. So it's not just the career coaches using it is also the tutors getting involved with that as well. We will sometimes come in to support, or they're quite happy to use it independently. Another way which I want to highlight is the parent support side of things. So quite often we get students coming in and there's, trying to have that triangle of communication. So it's a great tool to be able to just send the link over to the parents so they can work with the student and looking at our courses or looking at careers as a whole, and starting that conversation, getting the parent involved, which is a really good way to ensure that there's that communication going on. Also, reports are generated from this, so we're able to share the report, or the student gets the report and they're able to share it with their parent, with their tutor, or just keep it to themselves. But it's a good way to show that what they've been looking into. And again, group workshops. So what I really like about the tool is that it's differentiated automatically. So it doesn't matter if I go into a group of, say, level 3 animal care students, and some of them go, yes, I absolutely know that I want to become a vet, or the other person goes, oh, I don't know, I think I want to work with animals, but I'm not sure where. It really helps and supports my role, because I'm able to go, okay, right, let's use this site as a whole, get everybody onto it. And like I said, it doesn't matter where they are in the journey, it differentiates that completely. So that's great. So to move on, This is what I created, really just a really basic worksheet, and this is what I use normally within the group sessions. So it encourages the students to work through career coach as you've seen before in the slides. It starts with daily tasks, goes on to the attainment level, and then skills employers are asking for. And I find that this sheet really gets them to focus down and to write down and go, okay, I didn't realise that they're looking at this skills, and that's when transferable skills come up, and that's where conversations and then appointments with me get brought up again. So yeah, you can obviously develop your own sheets to go along with whatever it is that you're doing, but this is the one that I tend to go to. So to move on to the benefits and why I've enjoyed using Career Coach as a careers and employment coach. The first one has to be that it's local data. It looks specifically at the location that our students are interested in. So it's great for engagement and even better for motivation. It's specific to the learner, which is massively important anyway. And it shows specific roles and what employment rates will look like over the next year or so, and what they've looked like previously. And that's really important because it's realistic to the learner. So to just focus on that a little bit more, we've been working with UCAS a little bit and found out that the actual biggest search term on UCAS for Welsh students is that they want to stay at home. That's what they're searching for. They're clicking on the button that says, you know, the university is local to them. And that's really important for us to know that, because that means that the jobs that they're probably going to be looking into to getting, whether it's part-time, full-time, or their general career that they're going for, they're probably wanting to be based in Wales. So to the fact that we've got a tool that actually pins points into the region, it allows them to kind of have that ownership of, oh, actually, okay, this job is realistic and I might be able to get into that. And I think that's a really good motivation point for them. Secondly, sorry, I have to say the dreaded word COVID. With the current circumstances, it's great that it's a virtual tool. They don't need a career coach or a tutor or a parent to use Career Coach at all. They can absolutely log on themselves. They can get through it and work through it. It's such a simple tool. It's not hard to use. Very user friendly, which is great. So it allows them to do this from home, from college, on their phones, on their laptops, and I think that's really important at the current circumstance, that it's accessible to everybody. Thirdly, the career assessment tool. It's such a good conversation starter. I often get students in who really are struggling to open up. It's a big thing for a young person to be able to sit down and say, this is what I think I want to do, or this is how I'm feeling. And quite often those conversations don't happen. They do find it awkward. They do find it hard. So being able to sit down with them on a computer and going, okay, have you done this assessment? Let's sit down. There's 6 questions, 30 questions, or 60 questions. So automatically differentiation again. If you've got someone who's more confident, we go straight in with a 30 or 60 second question assessment. But for the more challenging, I can go, right, let's just do 6 questions. Let's start talking about what it is that you like and your interests and your passion. And that's where their career then is built from. And that's where they get to thinking about the different careers. And that's definitely come from their passions and their interests because of the assessment. And I think that's really, really important. And then lastly, signposting from our website. That's a big one for us of how the students were going to be able to access it. And not just our students, but, you know, people potentially coming to us or leaving us, you know, making sure that it's accessible for all. So we have a website, our Cyfleoedd website, which has lots of different support available on it. And this is one of the tools on there. They can literally just click onto our website and Career Coach is there. So it's really accessible. So that was a massive important part for us. And to move on. So this is a student called Martin Blacker. It's about 30 seconds long. I've used Career Coach with Martin in some group sessions. He's a civil engineering student in his final year now, so looking at doing a HND next year. So I went in. He's one of the students who's doing the Welsh back qualification. And so we had a meeting the other day, actually, a careers meeting. So I said, would you mind doing some feedback for me on how you've used Career Coach? Just talk openly about it. And he's definitely enjoyed using it. So we'll play that for you now.
My name is Martin Blacker. I study construction and the built environment at Virginia College. I was introduced to Careers Coach through Abby Bassey, and that's one of my lecturers. I found the tool very useful with regards to employment details and the requirements regarding wages, the qualifications needed for my career goals and other courses linked to my career. The data used for careers coach, it's a local area, so it's geographical location, and it's very realistic and very user friendly. I myself struggle with computers, but the platform is easy to navigate around, which makes it easy to use. Overall, I found it enjoyable to use, the Career Coach, and I would recommend it to anybody else, and I would use it again in the near future, no problems.
So that was Martin just talking a little bit about using Career Coach, and I think one of his main points there for Martin was that they've been given a lot of tools you know, to be able to explore their careers. There's a lot out there, there's loads of websites, and they all can be a bit bombarding. There's a lot of information on them all. I feel that Career Coach is able enable students to kind of take it slowly. They click onto the career they want, they're not bombarded with information. The tabs are simple, they can click through and collect the information as they want and create reports from that and take them to look back on and look over on and to kind of assess. So yeah, a little bit there. So I'll open up questions now. If anybody's got anything to ask, please ask away about how we use Career Coach and the benefits of it.
That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Abigail. Really interesting session, and great to see some of those uses there, and feedback from the student is really great to hear. So I'm just going to open out now to questions. We've got a few questions come through in the question panel. So just a reminder, if you want to do that, then please do that now. If you want to add further questions, there's a few questions, just more comments really asking for the slides to be sent and the resources to be sent, the Career Coach resource sheets. So we'll send those through later. So on to questions. I'll pick these first couple of questions up. First one is, what do you mean by track key feeder schools? So I think that was relating to the data analytics area in Career Coach. So what we basically do is within the Career Coach tool, so as Abigail mentioned, the assessment tool, we can put a question in there that the first question is basically your local feeder school. So we upload a group of your local feeder schools. First question then that the student would answer is what school they're currently studying at, if they are at school, and then what we can then do in the administration area of Career Coach is track where those students are. So we can then split that data out and see, for example, the top viewed careers and courses by those particular schools. So hopefully that answers that one. If not, then please come back to me and I can show you an example of that. Next question is, so I'll just read this through as I'm digesting it. So I think this was covered on the last session, and the person putting the question forward says they'll watch that last session. But what part does destination data play in projections, and is this an area you think should be developed by colleges? So destination data, I believe, is really important. So before my time at MZ, I was on the executive team at a couple of colleges in England, and certainly I think destination data played a huge part then in terms of how I developed the kind of marketing strategy and the curriculum strategy. We don't actually collect destination data at MZ. I think that tends to be done very differently in different colleges. But what we do have is information on profiles. So we have analysis of social profiles as an example. So things like LinkedIn, publicly facing job boards where there's CVs, and we do analysis of that to see what skills students say that they have and what occupations they've gone on to. So more than happy to do a demonstration of that sometime for the person that asked that question, if you want to drop me a line afterwards. So a couple more comments coming through. I've just got try and do the last couple of these. Career Coach looks like a powerful tool, and he plans to develop the resource bilingually and collect LMI data in terms of bilingual skills needs. So this is something that we've considered before in terms of different languages, and Welsh language in particular. We have investigated options around that, and the difficult thing with that is the expense and sheer time commitment and expense to developing that. But there are more and more tools out there now that you can use, free tools which can translate some of that. Ultimately the data comes down to typically down to numbers. So there's ways that you can integrate that data and do some of that translation quite simply yourselves. And in terms of the skill needs, I'd have to check that in terms of Welsh language skills needs. That's a good question that I've not got an answer to, but I will try and come back with an answer on that to the person that's asked the question, and we can have a look into that. It is a similar challenge that we faced looking at job skills and job descriptions in Europe, where we have different skill needs. So yeah, one that I'll be able to come back to you on that. And final point. This is probably one that I can just pop over to Abigail. At what point do you use Career Coach with prospective or current learners? So maybe that's one that Abigail can just comment on for us finally. At what point do you use Career Coach with prospective or current learners?
Actually, I wouldn't say there's a point, because as I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter where they are in their journey, whether that's for courses or careers. So whether they're not sure what course to take, not sure whether to come to us a college or not, or whether they've decided to come to us a college and they know exactly what route they want to go and exactly what careers they want to go into, I think this tool can always enhance their knowledge about what career they're getting into. So for instance, if it's a prospective student, I actually use this tool quite a bit on like open days and events. Getting students in, getting them to talk and build that rapport quickly when you haven't got a chance is really great. Being able to sit down with them and just typing in careers, just doing a little career assessment and getting them thinking about what they enjoy from a starting point of view, but also someone who comes in and says, right, I know that I want to be in the police force, so I'm guessing I have to do public services. And I say, oh, okay, so what do you want to do? What kind of level do you want to go into the police force? Is there anything specific that you're looking at? And then they go, oh, I'm not sure actually. And that's someone who's quite focused, and I'm able to then sit down with them, use Career Coach as a tool to guide them, and almost set up like a 5-year plan of looking into courses that they're currently going to go on to with us, then potentially onto universities, and the apprenticeship schemes all get brought up. So I find that it doesn't matter where they are in their journey and where they are in the process of careers. You can use it at any point, which I think is the biggest benefit actually of Career Coach, that it allows you to start anywhere.
That's a great answer there. So that concludes things for today. I really appreciate everybody joining in. I hope that you have enjoyed today's session and the series. If you've joined into them all, remember you can see all the recordings now, and we'll send a link out for that. Thank you very much to Abigail for really great insight into how Regent College use data to inform careers strategy. Some great work there. From working with Steve and Abby and keeping an eye on their social media channels, the excellent work there. So take a look at that for some best practice. Thank you again to everybody, and hope you have a great day, and look forward to seeing you all soon.